HOA president slammed the gate on my wheelchair-bound daughter, trapping her small body against cold metal. She screamed that disabled children weren't allowed on community pathways. My daughter cried, begging to go home. The woman had no idea I was Assistant Commissioner of Police. Her biggest mistake. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The metal gate slammed against my daughter's wheelchair with a sickening crunch that still echoes in my nightmares. I was exactly 47 seconds too late. I said no wheelchairs on the community pathway. The woman's shrill voice carried across the morning air like nails on a chalkboard. You're damaging the pristine concrete with those dirty wheels. My 8-year-old daughter Emma sat trapped between the heavy iron gate and the brick pillar, her small body trembling with fear and pain. Tears streamed down her pale cheeks as she clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest. The woman, later identified as Patricia Whitmore, the HOA president, pressed her considerable weight against the gate, keeping my precious child pinned like an insect in a collection. Please, I just want to go home, Emma whispered, her voice breaking. You're hurting me. I had been parking my car in the visitor spot, just 1 row away. We had moved into Riverside Meadows community only 3 weeks ago, seeking a peaceful neighborhood where Emma could recover from her recent surgery. She had been born with spina bifida, and despite multiple operations, she remained paralyzed from the waist down. Her wheelchair was not just a mobility device. It was her legs, her freedom, her entire world. The moment I heard Emma's cry, my blood turned to ice. I ran. I ran faster than I had ever run in my life, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my ribcage. As I rounded the corner, the scene before me made my vision blur with rage. Patricia Whitmore, a woman in her late 50s with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a designer tracksuit, had deliberately pushed the community gate closed on Emma's wheelchair. The gate, designed to prevent unauthorized vehicles from entering the pedestrian path, had caught the wheelchair's footrest, and instead of releasing it, Patricia had pushed harder. Ma'am, you need to step back right now. I roared, my voice carrying the authority of 20 years in law enforcement. Patricia jumped, startled, but her face quickly twisted into an ugly sneer. Oh, another entitled parent who thinks rules don't apply to their brat. This wheelchair is violating HOA Regulation 47B, subsection 3. No wheeled vehicles on pedestrian pathways. That includes bicycles, skateboards, scooters, and yes, wheelchairs. I physically moved her aside, my hands shaking with barely controlled fury, and immediately released the gate. Emma collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Her left hand was scraped and bleeding where she had tried to push against the gate. The wheelchair's footrest was bent at an awkward angle, and I could see fresh bruises forming on her shin. Emma, baby, I've got you. You're safe now, I whispered, holding her tight, feeling her small body shake against mine. My own tears fell into her soft brown hair. Daddy, she said I'm not allowed here. She said I'm breaking the rules. She said people like me should stay inside where we don't ruin things. Emma's words cut through me like broken glass. I looked up at Patricia, who stood with her arms crossed, not a shred of remorse on her surgically enhanced face. Behind her, several other residents had gathered, some looking horrified, others nodding in agreement with her. You assaulted my daughter, I said, my voice deadly calm now. You physically harmed a disabled child. Patricia rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh please, don't be so dramatic. I barely touched her. If you can't control your child and her equipment, maybe you shouldn't live in a premium community like this. We have standards here. We have rules. The HOA board voted unanimously that wheelchairs constitute a safety hazard on our pathways. They could trip people, damage property, or cause accidents. She's 8 years old, I said, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. She's a child who cannot walk. What exactly do you expect her to do? That's not my problem, Patricia said coldly. You should have read the HOA regulations before moving here. Ignorance of the rules is no excuse. If your daughter cannot navigate the community in accordance with our standards, perhaps you should consider moving to a more appropriate facility. The casual cruelty of her words, the complete lack of humanity in her eyes, ignited something primal in me. But I had learned long ago that rage, however justified, must be controlled and channeled into something more powerful than violence. I see, I said quietly, gently placing Emma back into her wheelchair. I examined the damage, my hands gentle despite the fury coursing through my veins. Emma, sweetheart, can you move your legs? Does anything hurt more than usual? She shook her head, but fresh tears fell. My hand hurts. And my feelings hurt, Daddy. Why does she hate me? I didn't do anything bad. My heart shattered into a million pieces. You did nothing wrong, Princess. Nothing at all. Some people have forgotten how to be kind. But I promise you, I will make this right. I pulled out my phone and took photographs of Emma's injuries, the damaged wheelchair, the gate, and Patricia herself. She noticed and actually smiled for the camera, confident in her righteousness. Document all you want, she said smugly. The HOA has the best lawyers in the state. We've successfully defended our community standards against dozens of complaints. You'll lose, just like everyone else who thought they were special. We'll see, I replied calmly. I then turned to the gathered crowd. I need witnesses. Anyone who saw what happened here, please come forward. An elderly man stepped forward hesitantly. His name was Robert Chin, and his kind eyes were filled with disgust at what he had witnessed. I saw everything, he said firmly. Mrs. Whitmore deliberately trapped the child. The girl was just trying to go home. She wasn't hurting anyone. A younger woman with a baby stroller also came forward. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I live in Unit 42. I've been harassed by Mrs. Whitmore 3 times for having my stroller on the pathway. She's been terrorizing families for months. But this, what she did to your daughter is evil. Patricia's face reddened with anger. Traitors. Both of you. You're supposed to support the HOA board, not undermine our authority. Your authority. Robert's voice was sharp with anger. You're not a queen, Patricia. You're a volunteer board member drunk on imaginary power. What you did today crossed every line of human decency. I gathered the witnesses' contact information while Patricia continued her rant about community standards and property values. Emma sat quietly, clutching her rabbit, her innocence shattered by senseless cruelty. Emma, I knelt down beside her wheelchair. I need to take you to the hospital to get checked out. Then Daddy has some phone calls to make. Can you be brave a little longer? She nodded, her lower lip trembling. Are you going to make her say sorry? Oh sweetheart, I'm going to do much more than that. I promise you. At the hospital, Emma was diagnosed with severe bruising, a sprained wrist, and psychological trauma. The doctor, a compassionate woman named Dr. Ramirez, was horrified when I explained what had happened. This is abuse, she said flatly, completing her report. I'm legally obligated to report this to Child Protective Services and the police. This woman deliberately harmed a vulnerable child. Please do, I replied. Document everything. While Emma rested, sedated with mild pain medication, I finally made the call I had been holding back on. I had been reluctant to use my position, preferring to live as a normal citizen in my new community. But Patricia Whitmore had made a catastrophic mistake. She had assumed I was just another helpless parent she could bully with impunity. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Commissioner Rodriguez? It's Michael Stevens. I need to discuss a serious incident that occurred in my community today. Commissioner Rodriguez and I had worked together for 15 years. He was my mentor, my friend, and the reason I had been promoted to Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Department just 6 months ago. When I explained what had happened to Emma, his fury matched my own. Michael, I am so sorry. How is Emma? Traumatized. Hurt. Scared. And I'm going to make sure this never happens to her or any other child again. What do you need from me? Nothing official. Not yet. But I need you to be ready. This is going to get complicated, and I need to do this by the book. No shortcuts, no favoritism. I want everything documented, everything legal, everything perfect. When I take down Patricia Whitmore and her corrupt HOA, I want it to be ironclad. You have my full support. Keep me informed. Over the next 3 days, I transformed from a concerned father into a strategic investigator. I had spent 20 years working my way up from beat cop to assistant commissioner, and I had not reached that position by being impulsive or reckless. I knew how to build a case. First, I filed a formal police report against Patricia Whitmore for assault and child endangerment. Because of the hospital documentation and witness statements, the responding officers had no choice but to take it seriously. Patricia was furious when 2 uniformed officers showed up at her door. "This is harassment," she shrieked. "I'm the HOA president. You can't treat me like a common criminal." "Ma'am, we're just following protocol," Officer Davis said patiently. "You've been accused of assaulting a minor. We need your statement." Patricia hired a lawyer immediately, a slick corporate attorney named Marcus Webb who specialized in defending HOA boards. He issued a statement claiming Patricia had been enforcing legitimate community standards, and that my daughter's injuries were minor and accidental. That was mistake number 1. While Patricia felt secure behind her lawyer and her HOA board, I was digging deeper. I submitted a Freedom of Information request for all HOA board meetings, votes, and communications for the past 5 years. What I discovered was disturbing. The wheelchair ban had been implemented 3 months ago, but it had never been properly voted on. Patricia had added it to the regulations herself, forging board member signatures on the documentation. When I interviewed the other 4 board members separately, 3 of them claimed they had never seen the regulation before it appeared in the community handbook. Fraud, forgery, falsification of official documents. But I was just getting started. I discovered that Patricia had used HOA funds to renovate her own home, disguising the expenses as community improvements. She had funneled over $40,000 into her personal projects, including a new pool, landscaping, and a complete kitchen remodel. Embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, breach of fiduciary duty. I interviewed 37 families in the Riverside Meadows community. The stories that emerged were heartbreaking. Patricia had harassed a family with an autistic son, claiming his outbursts violated noise ordinances. She had threatened to fine an elderly veteran for displaying an American flag that was too large. She had tried to force a single mother to get rid of her emotional support dog, claiming it was a banned breed despite the woman's medical documentation. Discrimination, harassment, violation of federal disability laws. Every interview was recorded with permission. Every document was copied and verified. Every witness statement was notarized. I built my case with the precision of a master craftsman building a cathedral. 2 weeks after the incident, I attended my first HOA board meeting. Patricia's face when I walked into that conference room was priceless. Her confident smirk faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Mr. Stevens," she said coldly. "If you're here to complain again about the wheelchair incident, I suggest you speak with our attorney. This board doesn't have time for frivolous grievances." "Oh, I'm not here to complain," I said pleasantly, taking a seat in the front row. "I'm here to observe. Public meetings are open to all community residents, correct?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Fine. Sit there and waste your time." I watched silently as Patricia bulldozed through the meeting agenda, ignoring other board members' input, making unilateral decisions, and treating residents with barely concealed contempt. A young couple tried to request permission to install a wheelchair ramp for the wife's elderly mother who was coming to live with them. "Denied," Patricia said flatly. "Ramps are not architecturally consistent with our community aesthetic." Your mother-in-law will have to find alternative arrangements. But she's 92 years old and just had hip surgery, the husband protested. She can't manage stairs. This is her only option to stay with family instead of going to a nursing home. Not my problem, Patricia replied. Next item on the agenda. I recorded everything. After the meeting, several residents approached me, having heard about what happened to Emma. They shared their own horror stories, their own documentation of Patricia's tyranny. By the time I left that night, I had 17 new witnesses and a USB drive full of evidence. 3 weeks after the incident, the local news picked up the story. Sarah Mitchell, the young mother I had met on that terrible morning, had contacted an investigative journalist named Rebecca Torres. Rebecca specialized in exposing corruption and abuse of power, and she saw in Patricia Whitmore the perfect villain. The news segment was devastating. It featured Emma, brave little Emma, sitting in her wheelchair with tears in her eyes as she recounted what Patricia had done. It showed the hospital photos of her injuries. It included interviews with multiple residents who had been victimized by Patricia's reign of terror. And it revealed my identity as Assistant Commissioner of Police. Patricia's lawyer tried to spin the story, claiming I was using my position to intimidate his client. But Rebecca Torres was a professional. She had independently verified every fact, interviewed every witness, and obtained documentation of Patricia's financial crimes. The segment went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed over 2 million times. The comment section was filled with outrage, with people calling for Patricia's arrest, for the HOA to be dissolved, for Emma to receive justice. Patricia went into hiding, refusing all interview requests. But the wheels of justice, once set in motion, cannot be stopped. The district attorney's office opened a formal investigation into the assault charges. The state attorney general's office launched an investigation into HOA fraud and embezzlement. The Department of Housing and Urban Development began examining potential violations of federal fair housing laws. 4 weeks after the incident, Patricia Whitmore was arrested at her home on multiple charges: assault of a minor, child endangerment, embezzlement, fraud, forgery, and violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The perp walk was broadcast on every local news station. Patricia, in handcuffs, being led to a police car while reporters shouted questions. Her face was no longer smug or confident. She looked terrified, diminished, broken. I felt no satisfaction in her fear. I felt only cold, calculated justice. The trial took 6 months. Patricia's expensive lawyer tried every trick in the book. He claimed she was being persecuted for doing her job. He argued that the wheelchair ban was a legitimate safety concern. He suggested that Emma's injuries were exaggerated. The jury didn't buy any of it. They heard from Emma, who testified in a closed session with a child psychologist present. They saw the hospital records, the photographs, the videos. They heard from the 37 families Patricia had victimized. They reviewed the financial records showing her embezzlement. They examined the forged documents. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia Whitmore was found guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Catherine Morrison, showed no mercy during sentencing. Mrs. Whitmore, Judge Morrison said, her voice cold with disgust, "You were entrusted with a position of responsibility in your community. Instead of serving your neighbors with integrity and compassion, you abused your power to bully, harass, and discriminate against vulnerable people. Most egregiously, you deliberately harmed a disabled child who posed no threat to anyone. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no recognition of the pain you caused. This court finds your actions to be particularly heinous because they targeted the most vulnerable members of society." Patricia stood trembling, all her arrogance stripped away. "You are hereby sentenced to 3 years in state prison for assault and child endangerment, to run consecutively with 2 years for embezzlement and fraud. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA for all misappropriated funds, plus damages. You are permanently banned from serving on any HOA board or community organization. And you will be required to complete anger management and ethics courses as a condition of your eventual parole. 5 years in prison. Patricia Whitmore, who had wielded her petty power like a weapon, who had made innocent people's lives miserable, who had deliberately hurt my daughter, would spend 5 years behind bars. But the consequences didn't stop with Patricia. The entire HOA board was dissolved and replaced with new elections. The discriminatory regulations, including the wheelchair ban, were immediately struck down. The community held a town hall meeting where residents voted to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination policies and create an accessibility committee to ensure Riverside Meadows welcomed everyone. The community raised money to create a playground specifically designed for children with disabilities, with wheelchair-accessible equipment, sensory-friendly features, and adaptive swings. They named it Emma's Garden. On the day of the grand opening, Emma wheeled herself through the ribbon-cutting ceremony, her face glowing with joy. She had nightmares for months after the incident, terrified of gates and angry voices. But with therapy, love, and time, she was healing. "Daddy, look," she called out, maneuvering her wheelchair up a specially designed ramp to reach a platform where she could play alongside other children. "I can do it myself." My eyes filled with tears watching her laugh, watching her play, watching her reclaim the childhood that Patricia Whitmore had tried to steal from her. Robert Chin approached me, his kind eyes misty. "You did a good thing, Michael. You didn't just get justice for Emma. You freed this whole community from a tyrant." "I just did what any father would do," I replied. "I protected my child." "No," he shook his head. "Most parents would have taken a settlement and moved away. You stayed. You fought. You made sure she could never hurt anyone else. That takes courage." Sarah Mitchell joined us with her toddler. "My daughter will grow up in a community that values kindness instead of compliance. That's because of you and Emma." As the sun set over Emma's garden, I watched my daughter play with a dozen other children, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, some neurotypical, all of them just kids being kids. This was what community was supposed to look like. Not gatekeeping and rules designed to exclude, but open arms and accommodation for everyone. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those wise, ancient eyes that children who have suffered sometimes develop. "Daddy, is the mean lady going to come back?" "No, sweetheart. She can't hurt you anymore. I promise." "Did you make her say sorry?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "She's facing the consequences of what she did. Sometimes that's more important than an apology. Sometimes people who hurt others don't really understand why they should be sorry. But the important thing is that you're safe, and you always will be." "I feel safe now," she whispered, clutching her rabbit. "Thank you for protecting me." As she drifted off to sleep, I sat beside her bed, watching her peaceful face in the soft glow of her nightlight. I thought about the moment I had rounded that corner and seen her trapped, helpless, terrified. I thought about the rage that had consumed me, the desire to respond to violence with violence. But I had chosen a different path. I had used the law, the system, the tools of civilization to achieve justice. Not revenge, but accountability. Not cruelty, but consequences. Patricia Whitmore's fall from her petty throne had been absolute. She had lost her freedom, her reputation, her home, and her standing in the community. The judge had ordered her house sold to pay restitution to the HOA. Her husband had divorced her. Her adult children refused to speak to her. She had destroyed her own life through her cruelty and greed. And Emma? Emma was thriving. She had started a blog about accessibility and inclusion, sharing her story to help other kids with disabilities feel less alone. She had testified before the state legislature in support of stricter HOA regulations to prevent discrimination. She had become an advocate, turning her trauma into purpose. My daughter was a warrior, just like her mother had been before cancer took her from us 2 years ago. Every day, Emma made me proud. Every day, she showed more courage than most adults ever display. 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter. It was from Patricia Whitmore, sent from the Women's Correctional Facility where she was serving her sentence. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. The letter was 5 pages long, handwritten on prison stationery. In it, Patricia claimed she had undergone a transformation. She wrote about attending therapy, about finally confronting the anger and entitlement that had driven her behavior. She wrote about working in the prison library, helping other inmates learn to read. And she apologized. "I know my words mean nothing to you," she wrote. "I know I destroyed your daughter's sense of safety and caused her tremendous pain. I know I hurt dozens of other people with my cruelty and abuse of power. I spent so many years believing that control and rules were the same as respect and dignity. I was wrong about everything. If I could go back to that morning and make a different choice, I would. But I can't. All I can do is live with what I've done and try to become a better person. Please tell Emma that I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. She deserved kindness and I gave her cruelty. I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for that." I read the letter 3 times, trying to determine if it was genuine or manipulation. In the end, it didn't matter. Patricia's remorse, sincere or not, didn't change what she had done. It didn't erase Emma's nightmares or heal her injuries faster. But I kept the letter. Someday, when Emma was older, I would let her decide if she wanted to read it. Forgiveness was her choice to make, not mine. For now, I focused on the future. Emma had been accepted into a competitive summer program for young activists. She had made friends with other disability advocates. She was happy, confident, and healing. As for me, I had learned that the law, while imperfect, could still deliver justice when wielded with precision and determination. I had learned that standing up to bullies required courage, patience, and unshakable resolve. I had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is not protecting your child from pain, but teaching them how to transform pain into purpose. And I had learned that my daughter was stronger than I ever imagined. On the anniversary of the incident, we held a celebration at Emma's garden. The entire community came together, families laughing and playing, everyone welcome, everyone valued. Emma wheeled herself to the center of the playground and raised her arms in triumph. "This is my home," she shouted. "And nobody can ever tell me I don't belong here." The crowd erupted in applause. Robert Chin wiped tears from his eyes. Sarah Mitchell lifted her toddler high in the air. And I stood there, my heart full, watching my daughter claim her space in the world with fearless joy. Justice had been served. Not just in a courtroom, but in the transformation of a community. Patricia Whitmore's cruelty had been meant to exclude and diminish. Instead, it had sparked a revolution of inclusion and compassion. Emma's voice still rings in my ears. "Nobody can ever tell me I don't belong here." She was right. She belonged everywhere. She deserved every opportunity, every kindness, every chance to live fully and freely. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure she could. The gate that had once trapped her now stood permanently open, a symbol of welcome rather than exclusion. The rules that had once been weapons of discrimination had been rewritten to protect rather than punish. And my daughter, my brave, beautiful, unstoppable daughter, rolled forward into her future with her head held high. That is justice. That is love. That is victory. 2 years had passed since that terrible morning at the gate. Emma was now 10 years old, and the transformation in her was nothing short of miraculous. But the journey to this point had been anything but easy. The nightmares had been the worst part. For months after the incident, Emma would wake up screaming, convinced she was trapped again, unable to move, unable to breathe. I would rush to her room and hold her, rocking her gently until the terror subsided and reality returned. "The gate is closing, Daddy," she would sob into my chest. "I can't get out. She's pushing it and I can't move." Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the child psychologist we had been seeing twice a week, explained that Emma was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. The assault had shattered her sense of safety in a world that was already challenging for a child with disabilities. Emma needs to reclaim her power, Dr. Walsh told me during one of our parent sessions. She needs to transform from victim to survivor to advocate. That's how she'll heal. And that's exactly what happened, though not in any way I could have predicted. 3 months after the trial ended, Emma asked me if she could start a YouTube channel. At first, I was hesitant. She was only 8 years old, and the internet could be cruel. But Emma was insistent. I want to tell other kids like me that they matter, she said, her brown eyes fierce with determination. I want them to know that when bad things happen, you can fight back. You can make things better. Her channel, Emma's World on Wheels, started small. Her first video, filmed in our living room with my phone, was simply titled, "The Day Someone Tried to Stop Me." In it, Emma told her story with raw honesty that left viewers in tears. "A lady hurt me because I use a wheelchair," she said to the camera, her voice small but steady. "She said I wasn't allowed to be outside. She said I was breaking rules. But you know what? There's no rule that says kids like me don't belong. There's no rule that says we're not important. And if someone tries to tell you that you don't matter because you're different, they're wrong. You matter. I matter. We all matter." The video went viral overnight. Within a week, it had been viewed over 5 million times. Comments poured in from parents of disabled children, from adults with disabilities, from teachers and advocates and complete strangers, all of them moved by Emma's courage and clarity. More videos followed. Emma filmed herself navigating inaccessible spaces and explaining what could be done better. She interviewed other kids with disabilities, giving them a platform to share their stories. She created educational content about different types of disabilities, breaking down stigma and misconceptions with the simple honesty that only a child can deliver. Within 6 months, Emma's World on Wheels had over 200,000 subscribers. She received messages daily from children who had been bullied, excluded, or discriminated against because of their disabilities. She answered as many as she could, offering encouragement and solidarity. "You helped me stand up to the mean kids at school," one 9-year-old boy wrote. "They used to make fun of my leg braces, but after I showed them your videos, they stopped. Now they ask me questions instead of laughing. Thank you, Emma." Reading messages like that, watching my daughter transform her pain into purpose, filled me with a pride so profound it sometimes overwhelmed me. Emma's mother would have been so proud. I wished every day that she could see the incredible young woman our daughter was becoming. The state legislature invited Emma to testify about a new bill that would strengthen protections for people with disabilities in HOA communities. I sat in the gallery, watching my 10-year-old daughter will herself to the microphone with confidence that belied her age. "My name is Emma Stevens," she began, her voice clear and strong. "When I was 8 years old, an HOA president trapped me in a gate because she said my wheelchair wasn't allowed on the sidewalk. She hurt me really bad. But the worst part wasn't the bruises or the broken wheelchair. The worst part was feeling like I didn't belong in my own neighborhood." The legislators listened, rapt, as Emma continued. "Kids like me just want to live normal lives. We want to go to the park. We want to ride our bikes or roll our wheelchairs. We want to play with our friends. We shouldn't have to be afraid that someone will stop us just because we look different or move different. Please pass this law. Please make sure no other kid has to feel the way I felt that day." When she finished, the chamber erupted in applause. Several legislators had tears in their eyes. The bill passed unanimously 2 weeks later and was named Emma's Law, in her honor. But perhaps the most healing moment came from an unexpected source. 18 months into Patricia Whitmore's sentence, I received a call from the prison's rehabilitation coordinator, a woman named Ms. Denise Carter. "Mr. Stevens, I know this is unusual," she began carefully, "but Patricia Whitmore has been working with our restorative justice program. She's requested the opportunity to speak with you and Emma, not to ask for forgiveness, but to take full accountability for what she did. It's entirely your choice, and I want to emphasize that Emma's well-being is the priority here. My first instinct was to refuse. Why should we give Patricia anything, even the opportunity to ease her conscience? But I thought about Dr. Walsh's words about reclaiming power, about transformation from victim to survivor. Let me talk to Emma, I said. This has to be her decision. That night, I explained the request to Emma. I expected her to be frightened or angry. Instead, she was thoughtful. Does she want to say sorry? Emma asked. I think so. But Ms. Carter says it's more than that. She wants to hear from you about how her actions affected you. It's called restorative justice. It's about accountability. Emma was quiet for a long moment, absently petting her rabbit. I think I want to do it, she finally said. Not for her. For me. I want her to see that she didn't break me. I want her to know that I'm okay now. 2 weeks later, we sat in a small conference room at the correctional facility. Patricia Whitmore looked nothing like the imperious HOA president who had terrorized our community. Her designer clothes had been replaced with a prison uniform. Her perfect hair was streaked with gray and pulled back simply. Her face, free of makeup, showed every one of her years. When she saw Emma, her composure crumbled. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to speak. Emma, she finally managed, her voice breaking. I am so deeply sorry for what I did to you. There is no excuse, no justification. I was cruel and heartless, and I hurt you terribly. You were just a little girl, and I made you feel afraid and unwelcome. I have thought about that day every single day since. I see your face in my dreams. I hear your voice asking me why I hated you. Emma listened, her face serious but calm. She had grown so much in the past 18 months, not just physically but emotionally. She sat straighter in her wheelchair, more confident, more self-assured. I don't hate you, Patricia continued, her voice raw with emotion. I never hated you. I was so consumed with control and power and rules that I forgot about human beings. I forgot about kindness. I forgot what really matters. And a beautiful, innocent child paid the price for my ugliness. She turned to me, tears still flowing. Mr. Stevens, I know you could have physically harmed me that day. I saw it in your eyes. But you chose justice instead of revenge. You taught me that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting the vulnerable and holding wrongdoers accountable through proper channels. I'm grateful for that lesson, even though it cost me everything. Emma finally spoke, her voice steady. You hurt me a lot. Not just my body, but my heart. I had nightmares about you for a really long time. I was scared to go outside. I was scared that other people would be mean to me like you were. Patricia's sobs intensified, but Emma continued. But you know what? I'm not scared anymore. I started a YouTube channel where I help other kids with disabilities. I talked to the legislature and they passed a law because of me. I made friends all over the world. I'm happy now. You tried to make me feel small, but instead you made me strong. The wisdom in my 10-year-old daughter's words left both Patricia and me speechless. Emma had articulated something profound. Sometimes our worst moments, our deepest pain, can become the catalyst for our greatest growth. I forgive you, Emma said simply. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. But because I don't want to carry anger around anymore. I want to be happy. And I can't be happy if I'm always thinking about how much I hate you. Patricia covered her face with her hands, her whole body shaking with the force of her crying. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for your grace. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, Emma agreed. But I deserve peace. So I'm giving you forgiveness, and I'm giving myself freedom. As we left the prison that day, Emma was quiet, processing the experience. Finally, she looked up at me. Daddy, do you think people can really change? I considered the question carefully. I think some people can. If they truly want to, if they do the hard work of examining themselves and their choices. But change has to come from inside. Nobody can force it. I hope she really changes, Emma said softly. I hope she learns to be kind. You, my darling girl, are already kind, I replied, kissing the top of her head. You're the kindest, bravest person I know. Today, Emma is thriving beyond my wildest dreams. Her YouTube channel has over 500,000 subscribers. She's been featured in national news magazines as a young disability rights advocate. She's spoken at conferences, schools, and community events about inclusion and accessibility. But more than any of that, she's happy. She has friends, both disabled and non-disabled. She loves science and wants to be a doctor someday so she can help other kids. She still has challenging days, physically and emotionally, but she faces them with resilience and humor. As for Patricia Whitmore, she was released on parole after serving 3 years of her sentence for good behavior and participation in rehabilitation programs. She moved to a different state to start over, away from the community she had terrorized. I heard through Robert Chen that she volunteers at a disability advocacy center now, working behind the scenes to support accessibility initiatives. I don't know if her transformation is genuine or if it will last. But I know that Emma's transformation is real, permanent, and beautiful. She took the worst day of her young life and turned it into a mission to make the world better for others. That's the real victory. Not Patricia's punishment, though that was necessary. Not the law that bears Emma's name, though that will help countless others. The real victory is seeing my daughter roll confidently through the world, knowing she belongs everywhere, knowing she has value, knowing she can overcome anything. Every time I see her laugh, every time I watch her advocate for others, every time I hear her say, I matter, I remember that terrible morning at the gate. I remember my rage, my fear, my desperation to protect her. And I thank God that I chose justice over vengeance, that I taught Emma that the system, imperfect as it is, can work when good people refuse to stay silent. Emma's story isn't just about what was done to her. It's about what she did with it. She transformed trauma into triumph, pain into purpose, victimhood into advocacy. She is my hero. She is my inspiration. She is proof that light can emerge from even the darkest moments. And she will never, ever let anyone make her feel like she doesn't belong.